recorded? Oh, no.
Now it is. So welcome back, or welcome to some of whomever that wasn't able to join us for the first edition, I guess, of questions and answers about passion fruit. So hopefully the information that we got to you last time, hopefully the answers that I gave you begin to demystify or at least provide you some of the real facts about passion fruit growing and or how to better grow passion fruit. So here we are, round two. So if anybody has any questions, I guess right now we can start. I can tell you that I have gone back now to try to regain a lot of my plants that I have lost because of the pandemic. Obviously, we can all say that some of them collections have taken a big hit. So now almost every weekend, I'm just scouring different nurseries, just looking for those plants that I may have grown them in the past, and now I want to retry them again and can continue on. And more important, continue to make them available because some of those are going to be the fruiting form that you might not be growing right now because some is just not available. Somehow they either, whoever has them loses them and they're the only ones who are supplying it. And if nobody else is willing to propagate them and send them out again, then it's just, you never get them. So hopefully we'll propagate them and make them available so that somebody wants to try a different one beyond the edules that you might be growing, beyond some of the others. And I am getting some cuttings of a supposed to be a good alata. So if somebody wants to try a different clone,
Yeah.
then somehow we'll make it available so that you can try it. And as I always say, and whenever I have gotten people who come straight up to me and say, I want the best tasting passion fruit. Like, well, everybody does. But whenever I share a passion fruit with somebody, it is customary for me to also give them the fruit so that they know exactly what they're getting. And it's no surprise. They can then either choose to take the cuttings, which is going to give them that fruit, or they can take the seeds as well. And that way they'll try growing it from seeds. Don't guarantee anything else, but at least if they're taking the cuttings, then they know that they're getting exactly that same plant or the fruit that I have given them. So that's usually my custom way of just having them taste it. If you don't like it, you know what? Don't take it, because I don't want you to say, well, I didn't like this one. Like, no, when you left, you try all of them. You saw this, you saw the color, you held it, you opened it. I don't even open it for them. And you pick the ones that you like. So I'm going to highly recommend, if somebody is selling you something, it's like, can I taste it? Can I be sure that it is going to be a good one and it's not going to have some of those aftertaste that unfortunately have been common with some of them. And or maybe not, it's not as sweet as you might have heard, or it's not as delicious, or you might need to process it a little. It's a combination of many things. So any questions? Any quick questions as we get moving? Go ahead, Hera.
Yeah.
Or Lisa. Lisa, sorry.
It's okay. Maybe I'll just wait. I had a question actually about the whole taste thing and if it can be affected by other stuff. But I think last time you were pretty certain it was a genetic thing.
It's a genetic thing. And I have experimented with several other plants, several seedlings that I've grown. And I can eat one from one plant and one from another different, just from the same seed lot. And the one that has really horrible taste, it just came from the same lot.
Is that chemical smell or taste like this? Is that a characteristic of bad tasting passion fruit?
No. So what happened, if you look at the literature, passion fruit, passion flower, passifloras are considered poisonous. So there are some of the poisonous ones. Keep in mind that over many, many years, the plant has also been evolved to fight off the caterpillars from the butterfly. So there's that passion flower butterflies that will feed on the passion flower, just like milkweed. they have evolved a lot of toxins to fend off the monarchs. So there are many chemicals found within passion flowers, and some of them are going to be a lot stronger within certain plants. The ones that are known to have caused the casualties of people, obviously, they have the highest form when the fruit is green. And so it just depends on the individual. I think from the one that I can say has probably the worst and the most horrid flavor of them all is that garlic passion fruit that is being sold by Annie's Annuals. It's disgusting. And I would never recommend that as an edible fruit. It's if you're saying that your alata has a aftertaste, this one is really disgusting. And so it's just the nature of the beast. However, genetics came out when your plant or from your plant is just the nature of the beast. The one thing that I kept thinking that I should have mentioned to you last time, you were talking about the temperature and you show me the thermometer. And we saw the one that was kind of in the colder area and you saw, oh no, temperature is certain degrees. What I'm going to recommend you for you to do, maybe next winter, put the thermometer not above your face, put it on the pot, because what the plants like is to have nice warm roots, and it is keeping the root system nice and warm that then continues for them to grow. But when you grow them in a pot, obviously they're higher in the they're not in the ground, below the ground, where there's some nice I guess buffering from the cold. So in the container, then you water them, then the water gets cold, and then the plant is not happy. So think about getting the roots nice and warm and toasty. Once you have the roots warm and toasty, then they continue to get the water and the biological functions continue. And the top portion can take a little bit more cold. So that's what I forgot to tell you. When you show me the thermometer later on, like, most often the important thing is the root system. Make sure that that is not under a lot of cold or under a lot of cold stress, because then that's when it slows down the growth and then your plant is not as happy. And then if you keep watering it and it's not happy, it's cold, it's not growing, then it's not taking all the water, all the vitamins and minerals. And then eventually, without drinking the water, then that's when it can lead to rot, because you keep watering it, the plant is not using the water because it's too cold to drink. And that's when you lose plants over the winter, because you want to take care of them, but they're not using the water as efficiently because it's just not warm enough for them. So you have, or take a reading at of your area about maybe chest level, and then take a reading of the temperature at a container level, and you're going to find a very big difference in the temperature. Or usually what I like to say to people, just squat, sit down on the ground, and you will feel very nice and cool. Whereas if you stand up, then you're going to feel a very nice warmth, because the heat tends to rise, as we know. So keep that in mind in the future when you keep trying to grow your plants in the winter and get them to keep growing in the winter. Consider that a soil or root temperature, which is also very, very important. That was bothering me that I didn't mention that last time.
That's really helpful, because I noticed a lot of even some of my taxonia outside in grow bags, where the bag is on the ground and the vine is way up, and it was getting really yellow, and I knew it was chlorosis, but I couldn't understand why it would have enough heat and sun on top, but it wasn't taking in any nutrients and was getting too much water, as probably. Now that explains it.
Yeah. We don't know. Normally we don't think about the roots because they're below the ground. Who cares? It's just taking care of themselves, but it does play a vital role. And as I mentioned also in the past, sometimes when you get a passion flower to a good age where you have where it develops a woody stem, then it's able to take lower temperatures even better. It might die down to the woody area, but then I've seen them regrow without a problem. So that's the other thing. So the top can tolerate the cold, but once those roots get damaged, then it's not going to be good for your plant. So General rule, keep your the roots nice and toasty during the winter, whereas the top can then tolerate some of the cold a little bit better. If you can keep it warm as well with that plastic, that's going to be even a couple of degrees higher than the outside, which is still going to be good.
I'm a new grower of Passifloras. I got a couple of plants last fall, and planted them. They seem to me to be doing great. I have now, not just in this talk, but did a little bit of reading and discovered that I had overwatered them. And I really appreciate what you're saying now. I've realized the root system of the container hasn't been getting a lot of direct sun. The plant higher up, just because of where that container is located, does get a fair amount of sun, but the body of the roots are not.
Yeah.
So since they're in a container, I'm going to try moving them. And
the warm temperature is what. Think about like back east where it's snowing or where the ground freezes. Plants don't start to grow until there's already been thawing on the ground and the soil becomes nice and warm. That's when you see some growth already out of them. And keeping in mind that the passion flowers come from tropical countries, we're now pushing them a little bit further north than they're used to. And so in their life, they would have never experienced that degree of cold temperature. And so that's why that is going to bring some stress. And anytime that you have a stress factor, you have a plant that's already shivering in the cold, it's under stress, you give it a lot of water. Now that makes it a lot more prone to infection, diseases, rot. And so that's where it's very important that you kind of manage your water in the winter so that you don't overwater them, because it's just that's the easiest way. And even some of my friends, folks that I know in England, where obviously they even get colder than you guys, it's getting them through the winter. Oftentimes what they will do, just as an emergency, if it's a prized plant that they don't want to lose, they'll take cuttings several weeks before the winter so that at least they can manage that in a smaller container away from soil as a rooted cutting in the window. And if they happen to lose their whole plant because it might be a very cold winter or broken glass and it was just nothing they can do, or sometimes the heater fails, then they still have the plant. And so it is customary for anybody else outside of Southern California, which we're very lucky, where there's real winter, to take cuttings ahead of time of all the plants so that they don't lose their valuable collection. And as you're finding those plants that you say, yeah, this merits for us to really protect it, then I will encourage you to take cuttings, make cuttings, share them with your friends. And that's what I'm doing right now, going to figure out who has what that I have given them in the past so that now I can get those plants back that I've lost. And that's the nature of the beast. Okay, so I have Tiffany with a hand raised.
Yeah, I have two questions. The first one was, do you recommend any, because I'm going to transplant it into the ground. So what do you recommend in terms of winter protection once it's in the ground?
So once it's in the ground, keep in mind, the ground is going to be warmer. So the solid ground, when it's in a container, it's above the surface. So that becomes a lot colder. So just by putting them in the ground, you have already solved a lot of the issues. Because we don't have like frost where you actually get the ground to completely freeze. That will be back east. So when you get them in the ground, then the first thing that I would recommend is to not amend the soil, because when you are going to be growing some of these plants, you want them to grow into the native soil, because the further the roots grow, the more they'll be able to survive because they're going to grow out. And if you follow the normal standard recommendation when you go to Home Depot or the garden center that says, do you want any amendments? The answer is no. Because if you put amendments in the hole where you're going to be planting your plant, then the plant will just grow in a bigger container, which is going to be the hole, in the organic matter or the media that you placed it in. But what your goal is to get the roots to grow out into the native soil and go as far as they can. Once you have planted in the ground in the native soil, and no, not any amendments, then the amendments or the mulch, the layer of organic matter can be added to the top. And just having 1 or 2 inches of organic matter on top, it's also going to buffer the ground from drying out. It's also going to buffer the ground from a little bit of the colder temperature. And if you're expecting a severe cold, then you can put another layer of hay. Usually people will do it for roses back east. That's not a bigger issue for us. Or if it's a small plant, then just putting a plastic bag, a clear plastic bag, because that will act as a greenhouse that will then retain some of the heat. I have not seen them in the store in a while, but back in my youth, when I started horticulture, there were those tomato bags that you fill them with water that allow people to kind of start growing their tomatoes a little bit early. So it's like a little baggies that you fill with water, you put them around a plant, and during the daytime, the heat will get caught in the water and then keep it warm. Or kind of heat up the water, and then during the night, then the heat gets dissipated, keeping the plant or the area around the plant a little bit warmer than the ambient temperature. So those have been around for a while. They're tomato water, or like, I don't even remember the name. But there's different kinds. So that would be something that if you're expecting a really severe frost, then that would be what I would recommend. Also, if you're expecting a frost, I would also recommend that you shower your plants, because it is it is a common thing when in citrus, when there's going to be a frost, they turn on the water, because what happens is that then the frost freezes the water, and freezing the water releases warmth, because that changed from liquid to solid, and then the water freezes and not the plants.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
that's customary with citrus, protecting citrus, because they're also a little bit sensitive to some of the frost. So those 2 things, just running some water, getting your plants wet, some of this extra baggies, plastic water bottles, even water bottles, clear water bottles around the plant will also help. And just mulch. And if you can, again, if the plant is small enough, a plastic bag over it, it's going to act like a greenhouse, and it's going to keep it warmer than the ambient temperature.
Great. The second question is, I think there's a misconception because I read all these posting and they say that I guess the root or the lower stem should be protected from the sun, like less sun, more shade, but the top should be sunny. So should I be
No,
planting in a sunny spot or a shady
no,
spot?
no, no. So just going back to the nature of the plants. So the plants usually grow on an understory plants, so in the forest or on the side of the road. And there's a lot of leaf litter, debris that will naturally create a blanket on top of the roots. And so the roots are always protected from the severe heat. So yes, so when you're planting them now in full sun, no shrubbery around them, then the root ball gets blasted by the heat. Yeah, that's going to dry it out very quickly. Yeah, you may lose it. So that's why putting some organic matter, putting at least 2 inches of mulch, compost on top to protect the root ball is what's going to be important. Last time, if you were not here for the first talk, we talked about ligularis, that sweet granadilla, that one of the things that I recommended for that one is for the roots to be in the shade. And the reason for that is because that one and the taxonia, the banana passion fruits, come from a higher elevation in the colder climate. And so when you have like a very severe dry heat, it tends to kill them. So for those specific high altitude plants, yes, get the roots in the shade and then get the plants to grow in the sun. But for the other tropical like edules or the other ones, then you can put the roots or the plant in full sun, but just put a nice layer of mulch on top to just buffer that solar heat. And it's going to keep the roots a couple of degrees cooler than just the surface of the mulch. So again, a minimum 2 inches. I wouldn't put 5 feet, but no maximum than maybe 4 or 5. The organic matter will break. The organic matter allows for water to still seep in, but it does provide some shade for the roots and also prevents the water from evaporating. So keeping the roots even nice and cool.
Oh, thank you. That makes a big difference now. I'm gonna put certain plants in certain areas. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And then Cindy,
Yes, can you hear me okay?
we can hear you.
Okay, I'll go on camera here. I'm outside. I did want to ask, I think you might have covered this last time, but I was so new, I didn't really understand at that last call. But during hand pollinating, how much pollen is really needed? Like, is it just like the one time and that does it? Or is it, you have to do it every hour or as many times as you can? How's that work?
No, you just do it one time. So when I hand pollinate, I would just take, it'll be one of those stamens, and normally passion flowers would have 5. And one of those stamens is enough for one flower. And you want to make sure that you put a little bit of pollen or as much pollen as you want into each of the 3 stigmas or the female component. And there's going to be usually 3. So I'll say you don't really need to like brush it a lot, just pass it. The stigma has special receptacles that just made to just hold the pollen in place. And it's a one-time deal. So for most of those passion flowers, I'm gonna say when the stigmas are receptive about midday, that would be the time that you can start pollinating. And once you do it, that's it. You don't have to go back because by the end of that day, the flower closes. And or if you don't do it on that day, you don't have a second chance. Then you have to do it for a new flower that opens the next day. But no, one-time deal. You put on the 3 stigmas to ensure that you're gonna be getting all the embryos and the big size fruit. Otherwise, you might get one that's just pollinated or fertilized on one side and it's not gonna be pretty and it's not gonna be, it reaches maximum size. But no, one time, I don't recommend brush or brushes, as many you may have seen it, because it's very easy for you to pick the stamen. For some of the ones that you're growing, like the big fruiting, the stamen is big enough that you can handle it with your 2 fingers. For some of the smaller passion flowers that I grow, I have to use tweezers.
Okay.
And I always carry a pocket knife with tweezers because I never know when I'm going to be pollinating them. That's a standard tool that I have. But yeah, all you got to do is I usually, like, even in my hand, just go and pick the stamens, put it in my hand, and then just go around stamen to flower, next stamen to flower, chuck, stamen to flower, chuck, stamen to flower. And I pollinate all the flowers that are open for that day. That's it.
And you don't recommend a brush? I like doing the brush, so I guess I have to get used to that.
No. I'm gonna say I'm gonna say
It's not
if you like the
necessary?
brush, exactly. That's as you speak with 100 people, each one is gonna have their own method. I love this. It's a work for me.
It's
I
super
like it.
fun.
Am I against the brush? The answer is no. What I'm
It's
meant
just
to
not
say is
necessary.
that it's I think it's just redundant because in this case, you can just hold the stamen. I understand the brush with some other plants that you definitely cannot just pluck the stamen, that you just have to carry the pollen from one plant to the other.
All right, maybe I'll just try it the right
and then you
way.
have a little container, and then you dip it, and then you brush it upon the plant. But I think passion flowers, the beauty of them is that they lend themselves so well to just pluck the stamen and just take the pollen to the stigmas.
And can you tell after it successfully pollinates that something looks different, or they close and do the same exact look?
So you will not be able to tell until about at least 7 days.
Okay.
So what happens is that, so at the end of the day, those are going to close, and that's going to, if it was pollinated and it was successful, then it's going to initiate the production of the fruit. But it's going to take at least 7 days for you to open the flower. And if after 7 days you see that the ovary has gotten bigger and it's green, then you know that it's still alive. Because if the pollination was not successful, then when you open the flower after a couple of days, then the ovary is going to be yellow and then it's going to fall off. And then the flower usually falls off before then. But if you take away the petals and all the flower components, and if you see that the ovary is green, is still well attached to the flower, then you know it was successful. And all it is just a matter of time for the ovary to swell, become the fruit. and then the
Mhm.
time for the fruit to mature and change color, and then you can eat it.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks.
Any other Lisa, you're mute, and then Noel. So Lisa and then Noel. Unless Noel, you have a question because you're gonna go to the game.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much
Sorry.
for Chowa. Yes, thank you again. Quick question before we're at the parking right now. What about is there a way to graft a scion into a cold hardy rootstock like a cerulean? So I guess my question here is, like, if I took a sweet granadilla scion, can I graft that onto a Passiflora cerulean with success, where it will tolerate the colder weather in the winter?
The answer is yes, and I wrote the article on exactly just that.
Okay.
So I do have an article that I wrote many years ago. I can digitize it and send it to you. So yes, that is exactly what you said. Can I graft ligularis onto cerulean? And so now the rootstock, which in ligularis is heat sensitive, can now be overcome, or it can overcome the heat. The answer is yes. And I wrote the article not only with ligularis, but also with banana passion fruit that I also have very difficult time growing here in Southern California. So yes, you can do it. And cerulean, the one that you say, is the one that I grows like a weed here, so I can get a lot of seeds and I can grow all the rootstock. So the answer is yes. You can grow the ceruleas from seed. And when the stem of the cerulean is at least the diameter of a pencil, that's when I would recommend that you graft onto the ligularis or the taxonia, or even edulis. The edulis form can also be grafted onto that. So the answer to you is yes. I can also tell you that grafting is done for, and has been done for many years, for protecting the plants from diseases, the soil-borne wilt diseases that are very common in commercial orchards for passion fruits. They are grafting them, and they are being successful in having crops of passion fruit. So I have already grafted several different forms onto cerulean, and there's many more that I haven't continued that work. But I think if some of you wishes to experiment with that, I would highly encourage it. So I'll digitize the article that I wrote many years ago, and I'll send it to you, and you can share it with your members.
Are you on the Passion Flower, the Facebook Passion Flower Passiflora Lovers group that Miles Stewart? Okay.
No. Miles Irvin. This is Miles Irvin from England.
Yeah.
No.
So what is the deal? Okay, I've looked because I'm on that group, and there's a lot of people that seem to like Chuck Chan and stuff. And I posted like a few days ago asking if I were to graft a flavocarpa onto a more cold hardy rootstock, if I could grow it here outside without any greenhouse over the winter. And I got a resounding no, it won't change the inherent, cold sensitivity. It might make it a little better, but not like that.
I'm going to disagree with that. And only because we know that for other fruit trees or other fruiting plants, the rootstock can induce some cold tolerance to the scion. So that has already happened with other plants. That's why I don't like this other group, because they did not write the article on it, and they're not experimenting with this. And so they're just saying, no, it's not going to happen, but they have not tried it themselves to verify and actually give you legitimate information. It's all, unfortunately, just opinion. And again, we respect our opinions. But unless you tell me I have done it and yeah, it didn't work, then I will never say anything like that. I would probably first say, go ahead, do it, and then tell me, let's find out, because that's the only way that we're going to ever find out. And keeping in mind that whatever climate is in England is going to be very different than yours here in California.
Yeah.
So perhaps the frost in England is not going to be as tolerant of that, but maybe the more of the milder winters here in Southern California or California, it could do it. So have I been successful in growing those cold tolerant plants here in Southern California? Yes, most of the photographs that you've seen in my presentation, if you got a chance to see that, where I have my legularis in cultivation, has been because it was grafted. The banana passion fruit that I've been able to grow here and get them to fruit has been grafted. And my opinion, my idea is that the moment I get a banana passion fruit in my hand, it's a time bomb. It's going to die on me very quickly. And so I get it right back here and I start grafting it immediately so that I can then get a better chance. Once it's grafted, once that's successful, then I can work on cuttings and figuring out where is the best place. But somehow they don't like me. They always die on me. And so you just have to figure out what works and what doesn't for your area. So the answer is, let's try it. I do think that having a stronger root system, a root system that is going to be able to tolerate the cold, will keep that plant growing during the adverse weather or during the bad season. And so that is inducing them some kind of resistance, probably long enough for then the temperature to climb, and then the plant's going to be happy and it's going to be safe. So maybe perhaps for that very short window when it gets really cold, if it's able to impart just a little bit of a tolerance, that is all we need. And that is already a success. So Miles, we'll talk about him. I cannot talk about, we'll talk about him off camera if you wish, but
Yeah, okay,
since
that's
we're recording,
fine.
I don't want to, I don't want to get in trouble if he happens to
Yeah.
come across this.
Something, I'm curious about something, because what is it about? Is it Carulia or Cerulia?
Cerulia.
Oh, okay. I always had a hard C like Latin, but okay. So why is Cerulia like seeming like, it seems like it's like some kind of universal passion flower. You can pollinate a bunch of different species with it, and then it's always like the choice for grafting. And I don't understand why it's a choice for grafting, because for me, that's actually one of the least hardy in my yard.
No, the only reason why I said that is because that one here in Southern California grows everywhere.
Oh.
It literally, I can go 2-3 blocks away from where I am right now in every direction, and I'm gonna find one growing somewhere, somehow, in an alley, growing up post. It's a wonderful survivor. And so if I am going to be getting seeds without having to purchase them from the internet and not reliable, then it's easier for me to just go there and pick a bunch of fruits. They're all gonna germinate, and I can get the rootstock in just a couple of months. Once you start venturing beyond that to find enough edules of the flavicarpa, the yellow one, that then you can graft the purple ones for the disease resistance, now you're going to be sacrificing 2 edible fruits or 1 edible fruit, the golden one. And so the Carulia, the fruit is not that good. So I don't mind this decapitating it and putting a good fruiting form on top. So that's the only reason. Have I experimented with other passion fruit as a rootstock? The answer is yes. I've also gotten success with it. But it's all as to what is available to you and or what you can get. And I mentioned for commercial production, the grafting of the purples are done onto the rootstock of the golden passion fruits. So flavicarpa as a rootstock, and just the plain edules and as a scion or the top portion. And that is when they're going to be growing the fruit for fresh fruit for the market. Otherwise, for the concentrate, then it becomes the golden, which is already resistant to some of those diseases. Not immune, but resistant. And then I think, Rosa, you had a question earlier.
I do, and I apologize if it's a bit basic, but tomorrow am going to be attending an event where I know that in front of the building has some gorgeous, thriving passion flower vines. I saw them covered in heavy fruit, last year, and I'll obviously ask permission, but I would like a little advice about how to get a cutting that's most likely to be successful. If I'd like to grow it, it's not far away. It's Berkeley, and I'm in El Cerrito. It's like 10 miles away. 5.
So if it's a common purple one, then any of the tips of the stems will work. And then you can go down the stem from the tip, and the cutting should be anywhere from 6 to 7 inches in length. That's standard. Can it be longer? Yes. Can it be shorter? Yes. But 5, 6, 7 inches in length gives you several buds just in case something happens to one of them during the process. So if you take from the tip 6 inches below, or make a piece 6 inches below, then you cut the bottom roots so that when you insert it into the rooting media, then the leaves are not going to touch it and they're not going to rot. And so then from when you take the tip cuttings, then you can go down another 6, 7 inches and continue on throughout the stem. You can probably take cuttings from a big lateral branch. Only when it's very woody, then you might want to step away from that, because then it's more difficult. Or when you start making the cuts on the stem, and if all of a sudden you make a cut and you notice that the stem is hollow, then you want to stop, because when the stem is hollow, it's a lot more difficult for it to root. But if you cut and the stem is firm and solid and there's the pith is not gone, then you're able to take cuttings from those. Tip cuttings works very well. Stem cuttings following the tip works very well. And with more experience, maybe a greenhouse or better equipment, then you can do some of the hardwood cuttings and or a couple of other methods. In growing passion fruits, we know that most of them can grow with cuttings. The only ones that are very finicky would be the Australian native passion flowers, and they just don't like it. It takes several months, if at all. And everything else seems to work well. Me personally, in my greenhouse, I had some species that have rooted in 1 or 2 weeks. But most of the edules or the Furinform, give them about 6 weeks, 6 good weeks for them to root, and then a few more weeks to get established. And if you get them started right now, which is still early in the season, you may be able to get some fruit by the end of the year, or they should grow. They should grow to a good size, or at least where they're going to start getting you some fruit. So that's how quickly they grow.
That's awesome. My other question is about rehabilitating those 2 plants that I mentioned earlier. So they've been in a container, and as I said, the container itself was shaded, although the vines had more sun. They lost their leaves. They've now come back some, but the growth is really just at the top of the vine, and there's a long length of vine.
So right now, you probably don't want to do any cutting, because that's going to put them under more stress. They've already gone through the cold. That's already stressful enough for them. What I would do is just let them be. So now water them. Now that it's nice and warm or warmer, if you want to give them a little bit of fertilizer just to see what happens, and then watch where the growth is going to be coming from. If you see some of the bottom areas or some growth from the bottom or the underside of the stems or closer to the container, then when you see that growth, then you can go ahead and cut the top if that is what you wish, if it's getting too tall, and then you can move it around. Or if that's the case, then cut the top. And then when you cut the top, since you have already cut the plant, then you're welcome to maybe move the container, because when you move the container, if this is a plant that has been there for a while, most likely the roots are in the ground. Maybe, I'm not sure. But if they're in the ground, when you're going to move the container, you're going to rip some roots. Inevitably, if that happens, you're going to have to prune it. But if you're already pruning it, then it's okay. You can get rid of the top portion, which you were going to cut anyway. And now the plant is not going to get as heavy of a shock, where if you shock it severely, you can lose the plant. And I don't care what people say, you can kill passion flowers. I know some people say, you cannot kill those plants. Like, no, I wish. I killed so many that I don't know, I lost count. So that's what I would do right now. I would say don't stress it any more than it needs. Let it recover. Maybe in the middle of spring, that's when you can make a decision of how well it's recovered. And then you can make a decision of to get it in the ground or move it to the better area that you choose for it.
Sure. And what sort of fertilizer would be appropriate?
They're passion flowers. They don't care.
Okay.
I would always say just get if you want to use organic fertilizers, that's great. Otherwise, what I would always recommend, it's a complete and a balance. So 10-10-10, 5-5-5, 20-20-20, your favorite brand, Miracle Grow, Kellogg's, whatever is available. As long as it's complete and balanced, then you know that you're giving the plants the nutrients that it needs. Other than that, everything else is just marketing gimmicks. You can give it citrus fertilizer, the plant doesn't care. It's not going to say, ooh, this is for citrus. We don't do that. We're passion fruit. We don't touch citrus fertilizer. I don't care.
Well, I do have some balanced fertilizers, so that's what I'll give a try. Thanks so much for your advice. I really appreciate it.
So any other?
Yeah, you were talking about cuttings, and what do you find to be the best medium for cuttings?
So what I started growing them many years ago with what is known as the standard commercial media for rooting cuttings, which interestingly enough is also how I germinate seeds. And so that media is just a simple recipe of 9 parts sponge rock and 1 part peat moss.
Sponge rock, is that like
perlite sponge rock?
Okay, that's all right.
Perlite or sponge rock, and then peat moss.
So it holds a little bit of moisture.
So it holds a little bit of water, and it's still good drainage, and it's still everything else. So that is my standard. That is what I call, not even mine, what I call the standard media for rooting softwood cuttings. So anybody who wants to grow sages, any of those plants, that's what I would recommend. And I also use it for seeds because then I know which ones germinate. And when I'm going to be separating the seedlings, because that media just breaks apart, then there's very little damage to the roots. So in my early years, that is all that I use. I had many 4-inch containers that I would fill up with the media, and that's where I did my cuttings. Usually in a 4-inch container, I can put about 10-15 cuttings, because remember, they're only there to root, so that's temporarily. And with cuttings, do as many as you can. Obviously, the higher number of cuttings that you make, the higher the chances of you being successful. So don't just do 1 cutting. That's ridiculous. You can always chuck them, throw them away, give them to your friends. But you want to make more because you should always expect at least a 15 to 20% mortality just because of the nature of the beast. So that would be what I would recommend as far as rooting media. And then you put that in a container. And if you have one of those little tiny plastic greenhouses with a dome, that's all you need. The other thing that is very important is the disinfecting of the cuttings. So what I normally disinfect the cuttings is in a 10% bleach solution. So 10% bleach, 90% water. You dip the cuttings in the bleach solution for 15 seconds. And then you do a double rinse in just plain water. So I usually have like 3 buckets, dip it into the bleach solution, make sure every cutting is completely submerged for 15 seconds, and then bring them out, let the water drain, and then put them in the fresh water, another bucket with fresh water. And that one you just dip and then bring them out. You don't have to wait 15 seconds. And then 1 final rinse so that now you take away a lot of the extra bleach. And so that is the standard disinfecting procedures for radioactivity. And so that is going to kill a lot of the surface pathogens. And obviously, you're going to also disinfect the cut area that you made. And so then I will dip the cutting in the rooting hormone, because that's also important. Is it necessary? No. Does it help to root faster? Yes. Does it help to have a better root system? Yes. But is it necessary? Not always. But rooting hormone is highly recommended. And then keep the cuttings moist. Keep it moist so that they don't desiccate, because if they desiccate, then they'll die. And wait until they root. Something that is very easy that I did before as well, if you don't want to deal with this mixture of Spanish rock peat moss, then get yourself a couple of Oasis cubes. Oasis, that foam that is used for flower arrangements.
That green?
Yeah,
Oh, that weird green
that
stuff.
green, that's Oasis. That absorbs a lot of water. And if you look next time for your Christmas, if you get a poinsettia, poinsettias are propagated in Oasis. So you cut it into cubes, and then you literally place the cutting in that. And because it holds a lot of water, you have to practically water it for like almost every 3 or 4 weeks. And then when the roots come out, they grow through the Oasis, and you see the roots already emerging through the Oasis. When that happens, you take the Oasis and the cutting, and then you put it in soil, and that's your plant. So that would be like the easiest way for you to propagate without having to mix things and this and that and the
You
ingredients.
plant the Oasis or you break it up?
No. You plant the Oasis along with your plant. And next time you buy a poinsettia during Christmas season, holiday season, look at the base. You'll see a little bit tiny piece of Oasis at the bottom, because that's how poinsettias are propagated commercially, as well as the tip cuttings for camellias or some of the more expensive plants are propagated through that.
Oh, that sounds like a pro tip.
And then if you wish to venture further, I would highly encourage you to visit your local marijuana shop.
That's where I
Hydroponic
get
shop.
most of my stuff.
So your local hydroponic shop may have fiberglass cubes that will behave the same way, or a few other probably newer products that you can use as well. But if you go to your local center flower shop, you can get that Oasis very inexpensive.
Would you use coco coir?
Coco coir would just be if I were to replace the peat moss.
Okay.
So
Have you had luck with coco coir? Because I mean, I don't know. Every time I put that in anything, the plants don't do well.
Mine do well.
I only use it as a replacement for peat. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't use it for like a media to grow plants, at least not yet. I only, if I have coco coir, because peat moss is becoming more expensive and not as commonly available, and coco coir is now very readily available, then I will use it. But that's about it. I have not really ventured into, let me now mix it and see if I can get a different media that is going to be wonderful for passion fruit. Not yet. Perhaps when they finally get rid of the peat from the market, then I will be forced to use it. But until now, I don't really use it.
I have a question about watering, because I kill my plants from overwatering fairly often. How long can you keep a passiflora that is in a, I don't know, 20-gallon container without watering? If I use my water meter, should I let it go completely dry before I re-water? Because I tend to put too much water too often.
The advice there is only water them when you know and you're certain that it needs water.
So not by looking at the meter, but by the appearance.
I don't use meters. Okay. Those meters are. I think they need to work on the technology to make them really accurate.
Okay.
My personal opinion. Again, if you look at the soil, or if it's in a container, if you lift the container, you can tell the difference between the weight when it has some water and when it doesn't.
Okay.
My advice is don't water it until you're absolutely sure that it needs it. I'm going to say that because the plants can tolerate several days of being dry. But if you are one of those folks that like to water plants because it's so nice, and I'm so happy with them, I'm going to take care of them, then you are the perfect candidate for killing plants because you love them too much.
I am.
And so what happens then, when you continuously water your plants, when you're not allowing the soil to dry out, then that is taking away the oxygen from the root ball, and the plants need the oxygen to breathe. And when you take away the oxygen, now you are inviting bacteria that is going to bring stress into the plant, and then the roots are going to rot. If you have a plant that is underwater stress, you water it, it comes right back. You might see a little bit of damage, a little bit of burning on the leaves, no problem. The plant recovers. But if the roots from a plant rot, there's nothing else you can do. You can just pray for it and put it in the compost bin because you have killed your plant. And so if you are not sure, don't water it.
Okay.
Simple as that. Again, there's many techniques. I will feel the soil if it's necessary. You can scrape a little if it's moist, or better yet, I will wait for the plant to tell me. So when you water your plants, you know the plant is the water is gonna make the plant rigid, because that's one of the jobs of the water. And then if you observe your plant, as they lose water and as they're getting dry, you're gonna see a little bit of an off color and a little bit of wilting, especially the tips. When you see that those tips that are normally like growing up, all of a sudden begin to arch a little bit, okay, I need to water you now. And then it just bounces right back. But if you're not seeing that, and if you're already telling me that you keep watering and you keep losing them, it's like, yeah, you are rotting your plants to death because you love them too much. Or it's what I always like to say to folks is that plants have survived a lot more. They've been here for a lot longer. And we just tend to forget that they are survivors, and we think that they're weak and we just got to protect them and do all these things. And that's why we kill them, because they're not used to all this loving. They're used to getting water when nature provides it to them. And all of a sudden we're giving them to them 3, 4, 5 times a week. It's like, that's unheard of in nature. Well, in many areas. But yeah, watch your plant. Get used to the view of your plant when it's happy, healthy, and fully watered. And then take some time and observe it like a couple of days, how, as the water has been drained away or lost or used by the plant, do you see a change on the plant color, wilting? And then a couple of days, let it wilt a little so that you can determine, hey, I think this is now too much. Now maybe somewhere in the middle is when I can water it. And keep in mind that also has to do with temperature. Right now it's mild. Later on this summer is going to be hot, so you might get away with watering a couple of times a week. But during the winter, when water rarely evaporates, it's just, you almost have to water maybe once or twice a month if it's lucky. So when in doubt, do not water it.
Okay.
That's the rule.
Thank you.
And,
All right. If someone
go
else.
ahead, Lisa.
Well, so I have this, those alatas, and I got those fruit from a cross between the alata and a caerulea hybrid or cerulean hybrid. Very few of the seeds from the fruit have germinated. I had 2. One I killed and transplant. The other one, I have this very small plant, and it looks like an alata, and it's really not thriving. It's just not thriving. It's like 3 months old, but like the leaves get kind of ripply. They're like sort of crinkly, like black night, edgeless or something. And it got burnt just going outside, and all the burnt ones fell off. But the thing is, like, I don't understand how it looks like an alata. It has 4 petiole glands. It's getting the square stem. And so I posed that question on your favorite Passiflora group. And people were telling me that it looked like an alata, that it didn't really make sense. Like, that it could, the cerulean mix I used might have caused the plant to self. Even though the Alata is not self-fertile, like somehow the foreign pollen caused the Alata to self, I don't understand that. But from your face, I'm wondering if it's even a real thing.
How big is the plant right now?
I mean, it's little and it's been little. You don't need to see no close up on my face. How do I switch this around? I'll show you. But it's weird. It's like,
Oh, I see perlite, sponge right. Good, good. It's a nice greenhouse.
yeah, it's this, yeah, that's on my staff. Yeah, no, it looks terrible. Like this thing is 3 months old. It just lost most of its leaves. They were saying that it could be a selfed Alata, and so it's probably really unhealthy because of that, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's weird looking. It's just like, it has crinkly leaves but it adds 4 petiole glands. What is this thing? What is this?
I can tell you what it is.
Okay.
It's a baby.
Oh,
That's why I wanted to see.
so
You might not know this, but when many passion flowers, not just passion fruit, when they germinate, the juvenile leaves are going to look very different than the adult leaves. So right now, those entire leaves, they're kind of nice and oval. Those are the juvenile leaves. It is a mechanism for surviving the caterpillars. So those don't look like passion flowers like the adult. If the caterpillars were to find that baby plant right now, it would be decimated. It would be eaten in an hour. And so to hide the babies from the caterpillars, the passion flower juvenile leaves are going to look different than the adults. And you need to grow that plant. And when it gets to maybe another 12, maybe 16 inches longer, you will start seeing the change in the leaf. It happens the same with edulis. If you ever grow the edulis from a seed, the first leaves are just like that, and then you're going to have the 2 lobes, and then you have the 3 lobes, and then all of them are going to be the same. Every so often, you might see the 2 lobes, and then a combination of both of them. So right now, what the best thing is, the only thing you can do is let it grow. Let it grow. I can almost guarantee you that your final leaf is going to have 3 lobes, because that would give you the hybrid of Cerulean or Alata Cerulean.
right. That's what I was expecting, but it has, I thought the Alata Cerulean or Bellotti, whatever, I thought that was
Again, that is just one clause that was done.
Okay. So the Cerulean, Alata Cerulean mixed.
In this case, I think you are worrying.
Oh no, that wasn't it. I'm not
trying to break your head as to what is this. You know where it came from. You know, at least you know one of the parents. You know the mom. It came from an Alata. Let it grow. So let it flower, and then you see.
But it was that whole concept. I want to know if any of that was even a real thing. Them talking about the foreign pollen causing a sterile plant to self. Like what is that? Is that even a real thing?
No.
So just pulling that out of their butts.
The concept, it's compatible. So it would be fertilized or pollinated unless you have pre-killed the pollen, so that when you put the pollen, the plant can be fooled into thinking that it was pollinated, and somehow it can carry the embryos forward and make it into a seed. But that's usually not the case.
That is a real thing?
Well, there is such a thing as a phantom pregnancy with plants. There is such a thing that's called bananas, where you have a banana that just produces fruit without any real seeds. So that is such a thing. So a phantom pregnancy. So could the plant have caused that? And it could also be in the one time that it liked to self. and it was already selfing to begin with, and you just didn't realize it. So my suggestion, you have the plant, looks good. Let it
Oh,
grow
it's
it.
lost most of its leaves, actually. It
Did
looked,
you
it was,
acclimate it? Did you acclimate it before you put it outside?
oh, yeah. It's just, it's been, I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on there.
Uh,
It's
it
been,
could
and
be,
it hasn't been a healthy plant from, it really hasn't.
and that already gives you some clues. So perhaps there has been already some inbreeding within your alata group. That could just been could be exposed, showing itself with this seedling that came out of that alata. Who knows? It could be a combination. The best thing we can do is grow this plant. Let's see what we get, because we might get some alata, just an alata clone, or just a variation of alata. We might even get some weird other alata cerulean hybrid that may come out.
That would be
Uh,
cool. I just wish it would grow faster. But anyway, that was, again, my question was more about that whole weird concept that was thrown out there about a foreign pollen triggering selfing. And I didn't, I asked for an explanation and no one even replied. So I'm
yeah,
like,
that's because I
"Hmm,
don't really know.
thank you. Okay, thanks.
So any other questions or any other concerns? Any other demystifying that we need to do right now? We'll turn off the recorder and then talk honestly.
Oh, wait, there is one more question. This other people, what do you do about spider mites?
Oh, big question. So that's always going to be a problem. So one of the best things that you can do for spider mites is just raising the humidity of the plant.
Mhm.
So every single time that I water my plants, I will shower or get the underside of the leaves wet, because the spider mites, if you ever notice when there's a really heavy infestation of spider mites on a plant, they like when the leaves are full of dust and they're very dry. And so that is the environment that they like. And so by you raising the humidity and literally showering or keeping your plants nice and clean and well, working on the hygiene of your plant, that is going to deter them from being there, because they don't like water. They don't like all this humidity. Then they'll move away into somebody else's plants. So I usually get like a one of those either like, I don't want to say power nozzle, but one of those like misters power nozzles that I can then like go, and as I'm watering the plants, I can also shower them and make sure that you rinse or wash the underside or the back of the leaf, because that's where they like to be, because they don't like the heat. So the underside of the leaf tends to be a little bit cooler than the top. And so that's where they like to hide. So raising your humidity is going to be one way. Showering your plants would be another very good way. And as you're showering the plants, you're also going to take away the dust, which is what they like. And so having very nice, happy, clean plants is going to be one of the easiest and the best ways to get rid of or deter the spider mites. I'm going to say you can get rid of them, but you're going to prevent them from becoming a big population and then overwhelming your plant.
What about once you already have them?
Then what you might want to do is you can spray your spider mites with your horticulture oils, your horticulture oil, your bulk oil, your neem oil, whichever product you wish to use. Obviously, I'm not going to recommend you a systemic pesticide, because that's going to poison your fruit and you don't want that. But if you use your horticulture oils just to lower the population, the horticulture oils have to shower the insect insect. So the way the oils work is that insects have tiny holes on the side. I'm trying to point on my side here. They call spheruncles. It's tiny holes that are located on both sides of the body. And it is through those spheruncles or those holes where the insect is able to breathe. They don't have a nose like us. So when you shower an insect with the horticulture oil, with the neem oil, the horticulture soaps, then the oil is going to clog those pores. and thus preventing the insect from breathing, and then it suffocates to death. But you gotta make sure that you shower the insect completely, because if there's one that is left unclogged, then it's gonna still be able to breathe. And so once again, as you are watering your plants, then you're gonna have to look on the underside and then spray them. And all that is gonna do is just kill those, the population, bring the numbers down, and then you can start incorporating just the humidity and or the water, or just on a regular basis when you see the population of spider mites just getting a little bit too high for comfort, just go back and shower them with the neem oil or the horticulture soaps. I don't recommend those pesticides only because the chances of it getting into the fruit is just too high, and something that I probably don't want anybody to get poisoned by using a systemic, which works well, but then your whole fruit is going to be poisoned if you eat it. So not recommended.
Neem has not done anything to the spider mites, unfortunately, in my greenhouse. So I just ordered some predatory mites, which have helped in the past, but I don't know. It's pretty bad, and I don't want to get rid of my whole collection of Passiflora.
So shower them. Combination of shower and neem.
Yeah, the problem is I have electric stuff up in the greenhouse, so I'm taking that down in like a week,
Okay.
and then I can start doing that. That is, there's some real limitations to growing inside.
And the spider mites are the menace for all of indoor marijuana growing.
Yes.
It's a menace because they're so good at being indoors without any problem. And if you say, what is the number one problem that the marijuana growers have in hydroponics? Spider mites. And it's just the nature of the beast. They're just good at it. But the marijuana growers can use those chemicals because they're not eating the product.
Well, I don't know if all of them want to use. I know my dad didn't like to. He wouldn't use pesticides on that stuff. You're smoking it.
Yeah, I know. Well,
Not that he did or anything. No, anyway.
I do have one last question. My cousin brought some, what she calls red passifloras from Spain, and gave me some seeds, but I have no idea what they call red passifloras. Do you know what species they could be referring to? They're not talking about purple. They're saying red, which.
So there's a lot of the reds are going to be forms from either like the Frederick that have been hybridized more. So what happened out of Australia, and I think I mentioned the name Ellis, there has been a hybridizer passion flower grower that has developed many different forms, including the big red, like a bright red passion.
They're big.
That is
Supposedly
big.
they're big. I haven't
So
seen.
I wouldn't doubt that it's a lot easier for the Europeans to get seeds from Australia, and then they grow them. And I know that there are many people that grow passion flowers in Australia, Italy, and Spain, and France, and all throughout European countries. So it is also a very popular plant out there. So I think, I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but in the passion fruit seminar that I think Noel has shared with you, I do have red purple, I'm blanking on the name, but I do have one of the big reds that is probably a form of that. I gotta go back and see the name. But most likely, if it's a big red, I mean bigger than almost the size of a navel orange, it's probably one of Ellis hybrid that is it's only available in Australia and Europe, and it still hasn't made it into the United States yet.
Okay.
Shoot.
But we'll wait. I gotta take a trip to Australia now and go get him.
Yeah, actually, that was somebody in this group posted, and a few people have bought them now. There's someone right in the East Bay here that's selling what they say is a golden passion fruit. It's a yellow edgeless, and they're saying that they're cold tolerant, and they left them out in a recent like freeze we had here, and the plants were fine. She doesn't grow them. She gets them from some wholesaler, and of course the yellow ones don't have any fruit, but the leaves do look like flavocarpa, like they're really huge with the red veining. And I'm just wondering, are you aware of any like flavocarpa style, you know, yellow that's cold tolerant enough to survive mild freezes?
There's a lot of claims out there.
Have you seen any of that, at least down where you are? I mean, you have warmer temps anyway.
I do have warmer temps. I can grow the golden without a problem outdoors here. And I am growing a few of them. Obviously, this was a very bad year. Our temperature in the winter was 80 degrees. Bad years for testing those. Has there been any? Again, I don't doubt it. I don't doubt that there has been a selection or some selection for it to be cold tolerant, especially because more people want to grow it in colder climates. I don't really know of any specific name, or I don't really know of anybody who has said, yep, this is for sure. This is the one, and has been already tried and tested, and it is successful in frost prone areas. Don't know that. Now, I would be more cautious, and this is just, I don't want to take away the credit from somebody who's growing it right now and saying, yeah, this is it. But this just one person, maybe they just got it. Maybe our climate wasn't even cold enough to really put it to the test. So I'm going to say, just take it with a grain of salt. Okay, so sounds good. But hey, if you really want it, if you're really claiming that this is better than all the others, can you please share a cutting with me so that now you can try it? If they are really, then if they have no problem with that, then there's no reason why it's more than one person can try growing in different climate, different areas. And that way you get a better understanding and a better evaluation of the plant. Now, if this is a person like, oh no, this is just my plant and I don't want to share with anybody because obviously this is my plant, and you know what? It's just a claim, and I wouldn't trust it. So if it's a real legitimate thing, then let's spread it out and have multiple people try it in different climate zones, and let's try it. And if it's the newest thing, then good. Let's record it and let's move on. And now everybody can grow their own golden passion fruit in colder climates. My understanding is still very tropical, even in Ecuador, Central and South America. The golden passion fruits are still grown in the more tropical lowland areas, and then the more purplish kind, and they're growing at higher elevation. But the mountains, that's not really conducive to growing the purple. And again, that's commercial in South America. I don't gonna say that people have not been doing testing, selection elsewhere. And if they happen to get it, let's share it. That's the important thing.
Is there any real sweet yellow Angelus?
I wish.
I've
had palatable ones. I've had folks who claim that there's, I think the real thing is that they are sweeter than some of the others, but I seriously doubt that at this point in time, and again, I have not come across any of them, that you can get a golden yellow passion fruit that is as sweet as the purple one. And if there is one, I definitely want to try it.
Was there a different type of Caribbean or something yellow passion fruit, or is that an edgeless?
All of those are edgeless. If it's a different passion fruit species, yes, there's many that are going to be very sweet, even sweeter than edgeless. And not as tart, like the ligularis. That's sweeter than all of the others. So there's other species that can be sweeter than the eduless. But if we're looking at the eduless with the flavicarpa, that is the golden one, have they already come up with a sweet, and I'm saying sweet, that is going to be good and palatable, fresh, without making your mouth pucker and your eyes are going backwards because it's just so tart. I have not come across it, and they're getting there. I got sweeter than normal, but I still would not call them sweet, or I still cannot take more than just a 1 or 2 spoonsful, because then it becomes too tart for me. Maybe maybe in a few more years, maybe somebody already has it and is hiding it. But I've tried the few that I think Ricardo has been selling. We finally tried them, and yeah, they're sweeter, but still, I would still go for the purple one because that's still sweeter and better tasting than some of these other newer varieties that people are coming out, like that Taiwanese yellow or golden, and then the other one which he also selling. But anyway, they're working on it. We gotta try it, and then we'll find the solution, or maybe we'll work on it, keep selecting them, and over many generations, maybe we should be able to get the golden passion fruit that is going to be as good and as sweet as Ligularis. Yay! Then I'll be happy.
Hey, Antonia, didn't you say you had a yellow edgeless in Puerto Rico that was
I
sweet?
do
Or was
have,
it-
and actually I'm going there in 2 weeks, and the person who takes care of our house told us that there are some fruits growing wild on the vine. So it grows very well in Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico's palcha, and that's very sour and tart. I don't know.
I like it, but I grew up with that.
Yeah, but it's small and even tart and some more sour than the regular South American one.
Oh,
Because
No,
that's been
I
selected.
don't know. I can spoon it out and eat it, and it tastes really good. So
Does it make your mouth pucker?
no, but I'm genetically disposed to.
okay.
Well,
But
make sure
someone
you
else told me
make sure the fairies bring you some seeds to your house here in California.
Now, if I try to cross-pollinate with the purple, then could I get a sweeter
Yes.
yellow?
So eventually you can. So it's not just, oh well, here, let me do this and voila, I'm gonna have a wonderful, magnificent, better tasting fruit.
So multiple generations.
Yeah, it's a lot of generations.
Yeah.
It's you find the parents from the potential ones, okay? And then you make the cross. Then you're gonna take every single of those seeds and you're gonna germinate them.
Mhm.
Then you're gonna raise every single seedling to adult stage when they're gonna give you fruit. Then out of those, let's say 100 seedlings that give you fruit, you're gonna sample the fruit and you're gonna only pick the best ones. And the other ones, you're gonna discard them. You're gonna chuck them. And then now those best ones, you can do several things. You can back cross it with one of the parents that then can give you an enhancement of some of the qualities, or enhance it with the other parents, so now gives you an enhancement of a different quality. And when you do that, you're gonna have to raise them again from seed until they mature, and then you try the fruit to evaluate it, and then you can keep repeating. Or you can take the brothers, sisters from the same batch that you selected for being better, and then you can cross those to see if there's some genetic traits that are hidden that can come out in the next generation of plants. So it is going through a lot of plants. It is going through a lot of generation. It's not something that I wish it would be just 1 year, but it's selection and keep selecting the sweeter forms until eventually you're going to come with something that is going to be way better than the parents, but that is going to be sometime from now. So yeah, it's called selective hybridizing, and that's how we get all this. That's how we're getting all this very nice apples from New Zealand and everywhere else, because that work started 20, 30 years ago, and they're barely coming out with the varieties of new apples, new peaches, plums, apricots. So it's not something new. It's been happening for many years. So whatever you're doing now, maybe in 20, 30 years, you can bring out your new passion fruit into the
I'm
market.
alive.
I know, right? Oh, Noel's not on here. Have you
But-
ever successfully germinated P. popinovi seeds?
So sorry, what was the question?
Have you ever successfully germinated the perfect passion fruit, P. popinovi?
Yeah,
or how-
Popinovi. Who has
Yeah.
the P. Popinovi?
What?
Who has it?
Well, neither Noel and I both got seeds, and
From
you know,
where?
I've heard it's
From where?
She got hers off a seller on Etsy. I got mine from Enrique's farm. No, come on, man. That's the thing is everyone says that in your favorite group, they're like, nobody has successfully germinated the seeds. And whenever they did germinate, they weren't Pope Novi. So
Yeah, that was so for some reason, it just, I personally have never tried it. I know that many years ago, a friend from Colombia was able to bring some seeds and he showed us photograph of the big plant. And I wish we would have gone seen it. We would have gone to visit it when I was there, but we didn't. But he harvested the fruit. He processed the seeds. He brought them and passed them to everybody, many passion flower geeks. And to my knowledge, I don't think nobody has come up and say, I have the real Papanovi. And I think that's that's going to be the main thing. Do you really have the real thing, or you have some other Nigradina Popenovi looking thing? So that would be my first question is like, can they give you a certificate of authenticity? If not, then you're just going to have some seeds that will hopefully will get you some decent fruit. But for some reason, the germination rate for Popenovi is very low, according to everybody.
yeah.
I never tried it, so I'm probably not the best one to really say, oh yeah, well, you should try this and you should try that. It could be that the seeds could be sensitive, so obviously they're tropical, so the sooner that you can get the seeds in the ground or germinating, the better, because the more they dry out, or if they dry out severely, then you start losing viability. So my first experiment would be if I can find the fruit and just take the seeds right out of the fruit and into the ground to germinate. Don't
If
put
we
them in
could
an
get a
envelope.
photo.
Yeah, don't put them in an envelope. Don't even take away the pulp. Just take the pulp with seeds and put it in the ground or wherever I'm going to germinate. That would be my first one, and see if fresh out of the fruit without having to go into a dry period, do I get a better germination rate?
Isn't that part of the problem though? I don't think you can get the fruit here, right?
Well, that's the dilemma. That yes,
Yeah.
I will not be able. I don't even know where the fruit is. I know somewhere in Colombia people have it. That's all I know.
Okay. All right.
The other thing that has shown, and you can ask 100 people, they have different methods of getting seeds to germinate. But many years ago, what I used to do is I would soak my seeds in plain, simple black tea.
I tried that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's common. You hear people saying, "Oh, orange juice because the acid from the juice breaks away the seed coat." You have other people that freezes the seeds and then puts them in hot water, and then they go through this process, and even the germination is not even 100%. My theory right now is that perhaps the seeds don't like storage, which could happen. Many tropical plants do not like to dry out, and as soon as they dry out, the embryo dies, and or it's just whatever clone people are managed to grow in whatever is native to is just one that has a good fruit, but it doesn't have a lot of germination or good viability on the seeds. That's all I can think of. But I think the more important is finding that certificate of authenticity, because anybody can sell through Etsy saying, I got Popenovi. The other question that I mentioned before, make sure that your seeds are either black in color or dark brown, because if they're white, they're not viable. And so many people, I've gotten seeds from, I'm not going to say the company name, but when I saw they were all white, like this is a scam.
Wait, where is this from?
I'm not allowed. I'll tell you after.
Oh,
when I'm not
you guys
recording.
signed an agreement?
But I gotten some seeds from a company of some rare passion fruit, and yeah, all the seeds were white, and that's it. They were no good. They were just selling them and making a big deal, but no, they were never going to germinate because they were never mature. And so I think it could be just viability of the seeds. Just like bananas, sometimes you have some seeds that start developing and then the plant decides to abort them. Like that happens. And there's no way for you to know that until you try to germinate them, and the germination success is very low, maybe 1 or 2 if you're lucky. So that's all. I have never, I don't remember if I tried it from that, but I have never come across Popenovi in my travels to Central South America. I wish I would have found the fruit to try it, because I personally have never tasted the fruit. That's why it's not even my presentation, because I've never come across it. Only a few selected individuals have it. And I heard that maybe every so often, certain markets have it. But that's all. If you know somebody who has it, is willing to part away with a small piece, I'll be very happy to drive to the Bay Area to grab it. But I don't know if anybody has it.
No, it seems like a mystery. Nobody's, yeah.
Hey, Professor, I have to go. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It was awesome, as usual.
So any other questions or demystification, things that we got to clarify? Well,
I'm okay. Thank you so much.
all right, well,
Thanks
then
again. I'm looking forward to starting some cuttings.
all right, so let me stop